Thank you. Okay, hopefully my screen is being shared okay.
Yep, that's all good.
Good. Okay, hi everybody. And Sarah, thank you for your talk. You even had me at the what did you call it? Hyper focus. I was like, oh dear, yeah, that I recognized a lot of the things you said on that slide about yeah, you talked about doodling, you talked about creative thinking, you talked about hyper focus, and I was like, that's me. And I hadn't really reflected on that before. So thank you for that. Yes, I'm afraid I am using the term superpower. It's a bit of a marketing term. It's a bit over the top perhaps, but I'm not using it about ADHD. I'm using it about how we can tap into hacks that we have to dispel stress. So I'm going to be talking about what are the symptoms of stress and also some of those hacks that we can all use. But first, I'm going to talk about a personal experience, which was when I was back in. So my background is project delivery, program delivery in the IT space, service management, mostly consulting, service management consulting. Yeah, so that's kind of my background. And when I was heading up a consulting team, so I was the head of business consulting, I joined one of the teams on a client call. So there was a big group of people on a Zoom call or equivalent, and talking about the engagement that we were on. And we knew that we had to get some decisions out of them. Now, my role was just to be a member of the management team saying, you're an important client and I'm here to support my team. And if there are any escalations or problems, then I'm here. But it wasn't to wade in. And I could see the conversation. We had a couple of techies on the call, and the conversation was veering off in the direction of getting far too technical. And we were beginning to see eyes glazing over. And I was thinking, how on earth are we going to turn this around? How are we going to get people to make decisions? Because at the moment, we're just confusing the hell out of everybody. And this conversation was going more and more off the tracks, and I was getting more and more tense and more stressed about it. And so for me, my temperature goes up. I could see on screen, so I was only a little picture like I am now, but I could see on screen my face was going redder. I could feel the tension. Mine's always in my shoulders and my neck. I could feel myself getting tense. My heart rate was going up because I was beginning to think, do I need to intervene? And debating what to do. And my breathing shallows. And so I noticed all of those things in myself. And because I have that level of awareness of what stress looks like for me, I could see it happening immediately before it had any impact on anybody else or changed my behaviors or showed up. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do two things. First of all, I'm going to give them all a bit more time. And second of all, while I sit here and see if they manage to bring it back on track, I'm going to practice some of my instant hacks and techniques to really calm myself down so that should I intervene, step in, then I'll do so in a really calm way and a collaborative way. And it won't come across as me just bursting out with, why on earth are we having this conversation? We need to do, and, undermining anybody. So that's exactly what I did. And so by the time I joined the call, I was cool, calm, and collected, and suggested how we could follow with next steps, make it look like it was other people's ideas. And yeah, the call ended well with us achieving what we needed to achieve and nobody feeling like I'd barked at them or anything like that. And so the reason I share this story with you is because there are two things that I had in my favor on that call. And one was awareness of what stress looks like for me. And the other was hacks to be able to use to consciously dial down my stress response and then be able to show up in the way that I wanted to. And that's kind of the background of why I'm talking about these things with you today. But so a little bit about who I am. Now, I think it's fair to say that many professionals in tech struggle with stress and overwhelm. Personally, I've also experienced burnout, and others on this call have already said that they have too. And now I provide tools and mindset shifts to help manage with all of that. I've got over 20 years in IT and consulting. And I also have a couple of yoga qualifications. So I integrate body-based techniques into what I teach, with a background in biology before that. So I also teach a bit about the science and the biology of stress. And I share all of that through podcasts, free resources, one-to-one work, group training, speaking, etc. So that's me. Now let's talk about you. So there are many different ways that we can respond to stress. And what we're dialing in on today is where we have a negative perception of the stress that we're facing. And these are the 4 different types of responses. Now, for the sake of this presentation, I've categorized them. We often see them being categorized in this way, but I think as we work through the symptoms, you might find that there's overlap, and a lot of people experience multiple. Either in one instance they're experiencing multiple, or more likely, I feel this way until it gets really bad, and then I move into this kind of response. So I'm going to talk you through these 4 different stress responses and what they look like. There's, if you would like to, I have a workbook that you can download. You can, I'm happy for these slides to be shared. I'm happy for links to be shared, but you'll see a QR code on the next few slides. If you wanted to download it, you can. Yeah, just if you wanted to take that away and digest it in your own time. So the fight response is where we feel like we're physically in danger, and the best response to the situation is to fight back, to argue. So in today's, yesteryear, this would have been the scenario of a bear's coming up and I've decided I can take it on. Nowadays, what does that look like? It looks like frustration, anger, potentially emotional outbursts. Sometimes people manage to keep a lid on it at work, and then the eruptions happen at home, kids, spouse, etc. Sarcasm is also a form of frustration and anger. It's just coming out in a slightly more perhaps it can feel like that's a more socially acceptable way of expressing yourself. Passive aggression, and then of course our body is gearing up for a response, a physical response, and so we'll experience the things that I was describing: tension in the body, and then another symptom might be arguing over the minutiae that doesn't matter. That might be on social media. It might be picking holes in things where actually the big picture's okay, but you're getting down into the minutiae and arguing over stuff that doesn't matter. It can also show up as things like incessant texting. So, oh, they haven't replied yet, I'm going to follow them up again and again, that sort of behavior. So the second one, the flight response. So we perceive danger, and the way that we believe we are going to get out of there is to run and hide. And so individuals who are experiencing something like this nowadays, they're sitting at their desk, they feel fidgety. They find it really hard to apply themselves, to focus. They want to go and empty the dishwasher. They want to go and make themselves a 3rd cup of coffee, that kind of like, and then if they are managing to stay at the desk, it will be fidgeting with things, having racing thoughts, and a desire to extract yourself from the situation. So, if only the world could just carry on while I quietly exit left, please. Avoidance. So that might be avoidance of social situations. I'm thinking in the workplace, but it could be with any. So in your personal life as well, and avoidance of intimacy as well can show up for people who are experiencing a flight response. Also, impulsive decision making is an interesting one. So a sense of overwhelm, and then feeling like you're forced into making a decision, then wanting to make a decision really quickly and not look at it anymore, kind of make the decision and run away from it kind of behavior. A fawn response would be, so if we think about this in terms of, yesteryear, what would that look like? That would look like communicating to the person who you feel threatened by, that you are not a threat to them, that you are bowing down to them, that you are not going to be aggressive with them, etc., that you are, subservient to them. So you see this a lot in animals. But as human beings and in the modern workplace, what does that look like? So this would look like people pleasing, suppressing what you really believe or how you really feel, constantly seeking external approval, so just self-doubt, and then feeling like other people know better than me, and just wanting to, can I share my work with you? Can I share my work? Obviously getting feedback is a good thing, but I just mean where we're doing it to the point where we're constantly seeking approval, we find it difficult to take steps forward, and trust in ourselves. This can also show up as self-neglect, over-apologizing, and individuals experiencing this often will seek solace somewhere else, so via food or other vices. The freeze response. Now, at its extreme, a stress-related freeze response can it can immobilize the body. So we think of the deer in the headlights, and human beings can still have that extreme stress response. In the workplace, it shows up more like feeling stuck, not knowing how to start, procrastinating over whatever it is, like, especially if it's you've got an impending deadline and for some reason you just can't bring yourself to start that work, even though the deadline is only getting closer and closer. Decision fatigue, so similar to making decisions and wanting to run, but just feeling overwhelmed by, I'm done with decision making. Overwhelm, self-isolation. They can also experience physical sensations of feeling cold or feeling numb, and often will have thoughts about, it's all going to go wrong, and taking something that potentially is fairly small, but then kind of what are the knock-on consequences? Oh, and then we could, completely lose that client, like, just taking it to the 10 steps down the road. So if you'd like to in the chat, you could say which ones of these show up for you. Some people find that they are completely in one. Others find, like I said before, that it's multiple at one time. And something that I've noticed coming up when I've asked people this before is a relationship between the fight response and the fawn response, which I think is really interesting. So quite a few people have said that they will people please and people please and people please until they feel like they're at the end of their tether, and then there's the big explosion and they switch into a number one. It's a fight response. So yeah, I think that these have interesting relationships between one another. Yes, does depend on the situation. Always fight. Some people are always fight and some people always flight. Yeah. Okay, the reason that I share this with you and to bring this into your awareness is because once we have a better understanding of what that looks and feels like, and underneath all of these will be some of those physical symptoms that I talked about, where the body is actually getting ready for some form of action. And so physical tension, a change in your temperature, a change in your heart rate and your breathing rate, those are going to be common to everybody, regardless of which of these you're experiencing. And so if you're able to know that that's the case and spot them in the moment, then you have choices about what you're going to do about it. And that's what the rest of this is about. So the superpower I was talking about is that we are all in the human body. And we all, therefore, can use the hacks that I'm about to share to be able to dispel stress. Before I do, I wanted to briefly talk to you about how stress works. So we perceive stress, and this can be from our thoughts. So we might just, be out and about and suddenly think, oh, I never replied to that email. Or it might be from an external stimulus. So it might be reading the email, or it might be seeing something or something else in our environment. A messy room suddenly causes us a stress response. So there'll be some form of input. But what I wanted to raise was that it doesn't necessarily always come from outside. Frequently, the source of stress is actually what's going on in your mind. That creates a trigger and kicks off a response in the nervous system, which in turn kicks off a hormonal response. And then that's where we experience those symptoms I was talking about. The tension, glucose gets released into the bloodstream. Our senses become more attuned because we're becoming aware of what else do we need to know about what we're on edge, right? So everything's wired for action. What do we need to know? Heart rate's obviously going up, breathing rate increases, but volume decreases. So that's what's happening in the stress response, but we can tap into this and we can reverse that. And it's really interesting that of the communication that's happening between brain and body, body and brain, it's actually 80% of that communication is coming from the body to the brain. And we often think that, the brain is the headquarters sending messages to the rest of our body telling us what to do, but 80% of the information is being passed from the body to the brain. So that might be changes in temperature. It's what's going on with our internal organs. And we can tap into this because if we consciously take control of things that communicate to our body that we're safe, we can then shift the brain into feeling safer too. And so the obvious place to start is breathing techniques, because I think these are the most powerful. And I'm going to share with you my favorite one, which is an instant hack. So it's called the physiological sigh, where we fake a sigh. And so if you'd like to practice with me, what we do is we fill up the lungs, we breathe in through the nose and fill up the lungs. And then when we're at the top, we fill up again. So we're really, really full. And then we pause briefly and then out through pursed lips. We're going to practice that twice together. So in through the nose till you're full, all the way up till you're really bursting full, and then out through pursed lips, long and slow. Feel your shoulders dropping. Long, slow exhale. Going to do that once more. Inhaling through the nose till you're full. Inhaling all the way to the top. Up through your lips. Long and slow. Feel the stress coming out of your shoulders, your neck, anywhere else that you hold it. So that's the physiological sigh. Hopefully you practiced it with me and you've noticed a shift. I would say practicing that under normal circumstances with 3 rounds, you can really shift yourself into a calmer state. If you're experiencing a higher level of anxiety, you might want to practice it for a couple of minutes and do it a few more times. It's extremely effective because we have these pressure receptors in our chest, and we are consciously shifting the focus to that long, slow exhale, which sends a message to the body to calm everything down. It slows the heart rate down. And so with that breath, by focusing on a long exhale, you're able to reduce your heart rate. Many other breathing practices do something similar. So where you'll have tried out these different breathing practices where you breathe for a count of something and then you hold for a count and then you release for a count. And what it's using is these baroreceptors in the chest, which then communicate to the heart to slow down. So really interesting how those work. Another great breath to practice is abdominal breathing. So where you're just relaxing your stomach as much as you can. For me, so I'm just wearing elasticated leggings today, so it's nice and easy. But if I'm wearing jeans, I might loosen these off if I'm doing this at the desk. So really try and relax the abdomen. We hold a lot of tension in our abdomen and we often breathe into the chest. But if you can take your breathing as low as possible into your belly, so just in and out through the nose. You can place your hand on your abdomen while you do this to notice where the breath is. You could even try putting one hand on your chest and one on your belly, and then you'll notice where you're breathing predominantly. Like, are you breathing predominantly into your chest or into your belly? And the more that you can relax the abdomen and allow the diaphragm to drop down into the abdominal space, the more relaxing this will feel. And the deeper your breath will be. So it can be as simple as that. You can apply a count. You can try to extend your exhale like we were talking about earlier. But just bringing your awareness to your breath, I think, is the most effective way of discharging stress. So we've tried the physical sigh. And we've tried a bit of breathing practices. Now, there's some other really interesting ways to tap into to reverse the stress response. Okay, tapping and TFT, yes, interesting. So sternum tapping is, I'm not aware of an EFT or TFT point that's on the sternum rather than at the collarbone, but you can do this anywhere on the sternum. And you can, in many yoga traditions, you'll know that they practice they'll practice some postures with hands brought together. And actually, if they were doing it to have the effect that we're after, they would then be pushing the thumb into the sternum and creating pressure there. This sends a signal through the vagus nerve, and we experience it to be extremely calming. So there are many ways that you can do this. You can tap. Some people even practice this for 10 minutes a day and go for full-on like Tarzan thumping. But it doesn't need to be quite that extreme. The benefits of that are also said to improve your immune system because it's also impacting the thymus gland, which isn't too far behind here. But for the sake of this conversation, we're really talking about switching from your sympathetic nervous system into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is about hacking into the vagus nerve. And this is one way. So if I was doing this and I was in person in a meeting, I would use my fist and place my hands in front of me and lean my sternum onto my hands, because it's a really subtle way that you can kind of tap into this with nobody knowing what you're doing. And of course, even there in a meeting room in front of other people, you can also just take your awareness to your breath and see if you can slow that down. If you're on a Zoom meeting like I was, then you can add humming into this. So humming also creates a vibration into the sternum chest area, but also up into, obviously up into the mouth area and even into the parts of the lower brain, depending on whereabouts in your mouth your tongue is. So when I'm talking about humming and it's on a call, like I would have been on the call I was describing, I would just do something very simple. I wouldn't be humming along to a tune because that distracts me, but just I'd pick a note and just hum, because all I'm trying to do is create a vibration. So it's as simple as this. And I can still concentrate on what the people are saying. Obviously, I'm on mute. If I would be doing this in a call setting, other than when I'm demonstrating. But yeah, so you can, and nobody will notice that you are humming whilst listening. So you're just breathing. You can still be making notes, you can still listen, but what it's doing is beginning to slow down your stress response, dial back that stress response. There are some other interesting ways of doing this. Now, where are we time-wise, Mark? We're at 1:15. What time can you remind me when I need to wrap up?
Oh, you've got another 10 minutes if you like.
Okay. All right, then we can try. So the eye exercises, when we're stressed, our peripheral vision gets restricted and our vision becomes more limited and more in the foreground. And additional to that, we spend so much of our day in front of a computer, right? So we're always, our phone is close to us, our computer screen is close to us. We spend a lot of the day focusing up close. So it's also extremely good for eye health to focus far away. And what you can do is pick a point. So I'm lucky because I'm right next to a window, but try and pick a point that's as far away as possible. And if you focus on that point and the longer you stay focused on that point, the more you'll begin to notice your peripheral vision, the more you'll pick up on the things that were once in your vision, but you weren't really aware of them. And the more that you look at that point and yet create an awareness around you and into your peripheral vision, it is another way to trigger that switch from parasympathetic into from sympathetic nervous system into parasympathetic nervous system. For people who are very visual, then I think this one works. For me, it probably takes a bit too much patience, and I much prefer an instant breath hack. Yes, sound bath. Somebody's mentioned something about sound bath, which is really interesting. Breathing meditations, I think. So you can practice these breath practices, like the long, deep breathing. Given that we've got time, I'll share with you another breath to practice, but just using breath work as a form of meditation. For me personally, despite years of practicing yoga, teaching yoga, I'm still not a huge fan of sitting in silence and trying to stay in the present moment and experience my body in the present moment. And much as I might try and concentrate on my breath, I still find I'm very easily distracted. I think I see Sarah nodding, which makes me think I should look more into what she was talking about. Yeah, I'm very easily distracted if I try and sit in silent meditation, which is where these other forms of meditation are so interesting. So, okay, yes, Helen, and you're a mindfulness teacher. Yeah, it's so powerful. I think it's so much. It's such a shame that so many people think that meditation means sitting in silence and having to have control over your mind, because actually sitting, breathing, experiencing your body, bringing yourself to the present moment. And there are ways that you can do that even if you've got a busy mind. So things like, you could just sit there and tap on your sternum and focus on your breathing, and that could be your meditation. Binaural beats, really interesting. Yep. So that changes the way that the mind is working. And again, it kind of tricks the brain and can cause a sense of relaxation. I find binaural beats amazing for concentration. If I'm trying to get something done, it takes me into that hyper focus. I'm unstoppable when I'm in that mode with binaural beats. And somebody said something else about sound baths. So again, it's vibration. What a sound bath is doing. So a sound bath, for anybody who doesn't know, would normally be done with a gong or with some form of musical instrument like a Tibetan bowl, and the concept being that you lie there and you get washed by this sound sensation. We are vibration, and sound will create reverberations in our body and resonance in our body, and that's super powerful, and much the same as humming. We're creating it for ourselves, but likewise we can sing along to music, mantra, chanting, all those kinds of things are creating vibrations, and likewise sound baths. Awesome. Oops, what have I done? Other ideas. So just tension and release. Like for me, it's always in the shoulders and the neck. So doing some kind of shoulder roll is also really effective. Moving the neck around. I'm in the middle of listening to a podcast where they're talking about cues and body language, and the most important measurement in the human body for somebody to think that you are competent and knowledgeable is the distance between your earlobe and your shoulder. Because when we're stressed, we're like this. And so as human beings, if we perceive that somebody is stressed, we think they might be lying. We think that they're out of their depth. So the more that we can, before we hop on that call, consciously drop our shoulders and release any tension from that, then not only is it relaxing for us and releasing tension and stress for us, but it's sending a signal to other people that I'm not stressed because I know my stuff and I'm telling the truth. There's nothing to be exposed, etc. Okay. So I've rattled through lots of information. If you wanted, and I can send these links, but if you wanted, this resource is a set of hacks. It includes the ones that we've talked about today, but goes into a bit more detail. There are also links to instructional videos and more about stress and burnout. So that's available to you. And likewise, if you wanted to connect on LinkedIn, that's my profile. This is my podcast. And it's been, I'm doing that with my shoulder, I don't know why. And it's been great talking to you. Thank you.